Nobody else has to do that today, except for town council when they get elected.
All right, guys. Good morning. I will now call to order the February 13, 2023 regular town council meeting. If you would, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Up first on the agenda is the approval of the February 13, 2023 claims. Are there any questions for counselors?
I have one question. We have Ice Miller showing up again for $3,000. I'm curious are we under a retainer at this point with Ice Miller, or is that billed as we go, or?
I'll have to find that out, Brian. I'm not sure if we're under retainer or not. I do know that they've been helping with some various things, but I don't know if it's just as we go or a retainer.
Do you have any idea what, I know the description was mayor's general projects, but do you have any idea what those are?
I do not know what that is. I can find that out for you as well
Okay.
and send it to you.
I'd request we pull that one until the next meeting then.
Yes, Cindy, I got a question about that too. Was that budgeted out of that department? Was that a budgeted? I mean, do we have these expenses budgeted for Ice Miller also out of this department?
Yeah, I mean, it would have been under the budget of most likely consulting or contractual services.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine. I'm fine with Council Trailer's opinion to pull that till we get.
And the other thing I had a question on was, and this may be a better question for Mr. Lance, but I noticed that we have a contract where we spent like $4,700 on snow removal. I know we have that equipment. Are we just, I know obviously our focus first is the community that surrounds, but are we just understaffed to be able to accommodate clearing town hall as well?
That's correct. Town hall winter services are under contract.
Okay. So
We can't get to them in a timely fashion. We're
Okay,
dealing with the
all right.
roads.
that's all. That's what I assumed. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Any other questions for Cindy? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is that,
What was the motion? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
Yeah,
motion.
I was going to say, you want to make a motion
Minus.
to remove the,
yeah, so I didn't, I think it was,
yeah,
it,
Alex, did you make a motion to approve all of them, or do you want to pull this one out? Or what? So you want to withdraw your motion? Is that what we have to do, Heather?
all right. I'll make a motion to approve pulling the Ice Miller $3,000 claim until next meeting
And approving all the others.
and approving all the others.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed.
Hey, President Plunkett, on the electronic agenda, we've still got the approval of the February 6th meeting. Did we not do that?
We don't have the minutes back from that.
We don't, okay,
Yeah.
got it. It was on the electronic one. It wasn't on the paper one, so I just wanted to confirm that.
Thank you. Up next is request to speak on agenda items. I do have a couple of them up here. Amy, are there any others?
There should be 3 there.
Perfect. All right, so just like last time, I'll start a timer at 2 minutes and then I'll give you a heads up when you're there and then you'll have 1 more minute. If you would, when you come up, just please state your name, your address, and the agenda item you are speaking about. Up first will be Sam Scheidler. Morning.
My name's Sam Scheidler. I live at 10325 Cottonwood Court in Oak Ridge. I lived there a little over 25 years. I'm here for, it's number 2023-03. Or, yeah, 03. And at last week's meeting, Pat got up and talked about that there's a group of people who wanted to add to the amendment that you're considering, and that was to open up the bridge and the pathway out to Holiday Farm. And I thought I was going to be able to speak last week, but I didn't understand the system and my slip got lost. And so anyway, I was unable to, but I wanted to refer to something that was said by one of the council members near the end of the discussion last week. And that was, to paraphrase, this only benefits Oak Ridge, and we already allow the carts on Willow. So I don't know why we're talking about this, or, something to that effect. And I live in Oak Ridge. And what is really apparent if you live there is that Oak Ridge is a pass-through neighborhood for Spring Knoll, Smith Meadows, Rockbridge, and then a whole rural area out there, pass through. So for carts to Holiday Farm, it would be for a much larger population. And then the comment about we already allowed on Willow, which with this amendment, that's all true. But as someone who lives in Oak Ridge, every time I go, and all those people who go through Oak Ridge, every time we go to Michigan Road to go to Carmel, Indianapolis, anything we want to do on Michigan Road, we go along the golf course to Willow, which is a T. And for years, it was easy to turn left on Willow to get out to Michigan Road. It's not anymore. There is so much traffic on Willow right now that I think it would be to only allow all those golf carts that are out in Holiday Farm to get to the village, to only allow that on Willow, I think is a mistake, because there's a lot of traffic on Willow. And with the addition of the neighborhoods out there and with some school redistricting, the amount of traffic on Willow is only going to increase. And there are blind spots and other difficulties out there. That's about it. I think opening that bridge benefits much more than just Oak Ridge is my point. And I don't think we want all those carts from Holiday Farm on Willow, because it's becoming a high traffic street. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Sam. Thank you. Up next would be Kim Graham.
My name is Kim Graham, and I live at 10309 Hickory Ridge in Oak Ridge. And I've been a resident of Zionsville for 35 years. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning, Mr. President. And I am here to speak about the golf cart ordinance. And I agree with everything that Sam just said. I was out of town during the last meeting, so I wasn't able to be here, but I did watch it online and would like to speak in favor of the ordinance, and especially the request for golf carts to be on Turkey Foot Road and the 225 feet of path and the bridge specifically. I feel that I can provide a unique perspective on this because I'm a runner, I'm a biker, I'm a golfer. I live in Oak Ridge and I have a lot in Holiday Farms with plans to build. I'm on that path almost every day. And I have some photos and some measurements that I'd like to provide so that it's clear to the council what our request is actually entailing. First, I think it's important to note that the Turkey Foot Trail is 13 feet wide. This trail is wider than any other sidewalk, path, or trail that I know of in Zionsville. And the section of the Turkey Foot Trail that would need to be addressed, again, it's a mere 225 feet. As of now, golf carts are already coexisting nicely with runners, walkers, and strollers on the remaining almost 3/4 of a mile of the trail that extends from the yellow park bollards on through the Holiday Farms neighborhood to Barrington Way. I've spoken to many families in both Oak Ridge and Holiday Farms that are in favor and would welcome this addition to the ordinance. Allowing carts on this part of the trail would give Holiday Farms residents easier and safer access to town. I was recently in a community where it was made very clear to me that the path I was running on was a shared path. It was very well posted. There were signs, let's see. It was a morning rush hour, and it was my observation that the residents of that community were very compliant and respectful of the rules. And I think living in Zionsville for the amount of time I have, I think those are the same kind of residents we have here, and they would be respectful and compliant. If the path were open to golf carts, residents in not only Oak Ridge, but Smith Meadows, Button Down Farms, Colony Woods, Spring Knoll, and many others could drive their electric carts to Holiday Farms instead of adding additional cars to the already busy roads. As a golfing member of Holiday Farms, I would love to have the opportunity to drive my cart through Oak Ridge and on a quiet trail versus the busy roads.
Thank you, Kim. All right, all right, up next is Pat Cross.
Good morning, council members. Pat Cross, 4998 Turkey Foot Road. Lived in Zionsville for more than 20 years. I'll keep my comments brief. With 3 minutes, I suppose there's no other option. What Kim said is 95% of the Turkey Foot Trail is actually on Holiday Farms property. That's something that I learned recently. And so the 225 feet is just the portion beyond the bridge. And so there are already golf carts on that trail. The 5% is owned by Zionsville Parks and Recreation. I've not had a chance. I have spoken to some folks with the Parks Board, but I've not had a chance to nail down all the related issues. But the long and short of it is, it seems like given the ownership, there should be a way to work this out. I understand that at least one person has raised concern about the bridge itself. I'm not a bridge engineer, but as far as the trail and the bridge, there should be signage to help ensure that they're used safely. Emergency vehicles would still have access to the trail, easy access from Holiday Farms from the north end, and then also obviously south of the bridge from the south end. If the bridge isn't safe for golf cart use, we have a bigger problem. Because I see, living on Turkey Foot, I see packs of runners, including some of our Zionsville Community Schools teams running across the bridge. And together they weigh more than 1 or 2 golf carts with riders. So it, again, not a bridge engineer, certainly we should ensure that it's safe, but it certainly seems like it should be safe. And then the last thing that I'll mention is our nearby neighbor Westfield is home to Bridgewater Golf Club, which was also developed by the folks that developed Holiday Farms. Westfield has a golf cart ordinance that permits carts to be used on some trails, principally those that lead to Bridgewater. I hope you'll agree with me that the good people of Westfield are not any more deserving than the people of Zionsville to have this safer, convenient access to a major amenity, a major asset of Zionsville, Holiday Farms. And then the last thing I'll mention is, as far as having carts on trails, this is the only trail. So for folks who are interested in going to a trail that doesn't have golf carts, this trail already has golf carts. Fortunately, there are many other wonderful options in Zionsville. So we appreciate your consideration and your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Right on time. All right, up next is the Mayor Administration update. We did not receive anything from the Mayor of the Administration, so we'll move on to Town Council update. Are there any updates from councilors?
On my update is there is no update on the insurance claim. No further communications there. I again stress to the mayor and the administration that they need to be working on this. If my math is correct, we are running up against a timeline where we will get sued. And it's not necessarily because the petitioner will want to sue us, but because they are running out of time with the statute of limitations. So again, I think this is maybe the sixth meeting in a row. I'm asking that the administration make this a priority and push to get this settled. Thank you.
And a potential loss could be way more expensive than a settlement, right? And not only if the
Will be.
outcome, yeah,
Will
yeah,
be.
legal fees, any judgment. I don't understand why they just sit on their hands.
I did briefly speak with the claims adjuster from the insurance company last Thursday and was informed that they would be making an offer. However, this is the third time they've told me that.
Right. And no
So-
offer has been made.
Right.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's getting bottlenecked somewhere, and it's frustrating on a lot of different fronts, but I would agree with you, Council Traylor. Up next is old business. First item up is consideration of an ordinance amending the traffic code of the town of Zionsville. This is on First Street. This is ordinance 2022-02. This is a final reading. I know Lance is here, but as I shared with you guys last meeting, this is designed to remove the loading zone north of Oak Street on First Street. As I've said before, when we put that in, I think 3 or 4 years ago, there was a lot of loading and unloading that took place because of restaurants that were there. One of those restaurants is no longer there. The other restaurants don't receive their stuff during that same time. And I think that going down there and sitting in the coffee shop and seeing the cars that are there, I think it's also an issue that we just need to make it a little bit easier for our police officers that we don't necessarily want them enforcing just traffic codes. We'd like for them to be out doing other stuff too. So if we can't, I think we've got a lot going on, and it's kind of difficult at times to enforce that in the morning. So I think it just makes sense to remove it. I know Lance is here again, if anybody has any questions for him.
Lance, you're supportive of this, I assume? Yes, no? Don't know. Okay.
He said it makes sense. That way you don't have to come up here. How's that? Any other questions or conversation from counselors?
I'll make a motion to approve on final reading.
I'll second that. First by Counselor Garrett, second by President Plunkett. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Next item up on the agenda is a consideration of an ordinance amending the traffic code for the town of Zionsville. This is in Colony Woods, ordinance 2023-03. Again, Lance is here for this one as well. As we talked about in the last meeting, this is no different than what we implemented across the street from the high school. We're having similar concerns with people dropping off in Colony Woods and their kids running across the street in an effort to avoid drop off and pickup line. So I think this was brought to our attention. Lance and I met with a resident of Colony Woods. And before we put it on the agenda, we requested the approval of the Colony Woods POA, and we received that. They are supportive of this. So it seems like something that would certainly make sense. Any questions or comments from counselors? Move to approve. First by Vice President Burke,
Second.
second by Counselor Traylor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those
Aye.
opposed-
I'm in favor. A little slow.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is a consideration of an ordinance amending the traffic code for the town of Zionsville. This is the golf cart ordinance 2023-04. I would actually request, Heather is in the process of doing additional research on state statutes allowing golf carts in certain areas. We've got a couple other boxes to check. I think we'd like to continue this to the next meeting if you guys are okay with that.
Can I ask one question of Jared?
Yeah.
I just want to clarify something that some of the request to speak folks said. The trail that's on Holiday Farms property is not owned by Holiday Farms. It is still owned by the town, correct?
Lance might need to help me with this one. There is an easement on the right of way, which used to be the road that extends north of Turkey Foot. And there is an agreed understanding within those easement conditions that golf carts are permitted within that stretch of trail segment as it pertains to Holiday Farms.
So let me rephrase the question. The Turkey Foot Trail that is on Holiday Farms is owned by the town. Is that a correct statement? Or is it owned by Holiday Farms?
If I can jump in just to give an assist to Jared. So that's actually one of the things we're researching. So we had an opportunity, myself, Counselor Plunkett and Counselor Burke, to talk a little bit about that at our leadership meeting on Friday. And I know I wanted to reach out to Mr. Lance to look at the way we did the petition for Holiday Farm and who owns that segment of the property, what the easements are, and who's able to go across on golf carts now. So we have not done that unless Lance happens to know that off the top of his head, but that's one of the things we wanted to figure out. I know I talked to Mr. Cross about it at length and trying to figure out if there's a way, not only with this property, but other properties for trails that might be adjacent to a golf course to kind of look at that maybe a little bit differently. So you may
specific to the question of the ownership of former Turkey Foot Road that is in the process of being dedicated in fee simple to the town. The question remains whether it goes to the town proper or to the Parks Board. But that is actually recognized former county right of way. And that will be a transaction not from Holiday Farms, but much as you did with the old section of O'Neill Road, Holiday Road going over towards 975. The county commissioners will transfer that right of way to the town or to the Parks Board. So ultimately, we will be the owners of that particular trail segment.
Got it. I was not aware, and I'm not against it, but I was not aware that the current trail that runs sort of parallel to holes 7 and 8 was allowed to have golf cart traffic on it. It is allowed to have golf cart traffic on it?
Yes, I believe that was in the conditions of that transfer, which has been going on for the past 2 years.
Got it. Okay. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. I'm fine continuing it to make sure we get that legalese, but I am supportive of getting those folks safer way, because I do agree with some of the folks saying Willow is very fast and I would not drive my golf cart on that.
And if I have a moment, just to speak about the bridge. So the bridge originally was designed to be rated for a 1/2-ton pickup truck. There has been severe rot in some of the pillars underneath. It remains completely safe and will continue to be for pedestrian traffics and loads. But at this time, we have paused emergency response and maintenance activities driving over that bridge while we look to fix that. So that project has been outbid for bid twice and failed to receive bids. So we are looking at if we can complete that in-house with our team and our capabilities, or redesigning it to be steel rather than wood.
Jared, with that being said, do you have concerns about golf carts? I mean, obviously, that's not the same load as a pickup truck.
And that's a much more nuanced conversation about whether we allow golf carts in our park system or if this is the exception, since it is close to a course. What I will say is that within the deed of Turkey Foot, there is a restriction on motorized vehicles of this nature. So there is the limiting factor within the deed. Many times when we receive parkland, they come with those caveats and we have to abide by those. So abuse of that deed restriction could result in the removal of title of ownership from the town. So that's certainly something we need to have considered during this conversation.
Thank you.
So Jared, a couple questions for you on this one. And full disclosure, I'm a golf member too, and I'd be fine with as well. I'm more worried about the safety piece, as I mentioned last week. I did have a few people come up to me that are Holiday Farm members saying they agreed with my comments. But obviously, I'm not saying whether I approve it or not. I just want to start with that. My key thing is safety. And going back to this, yes, you would be on less of Willow Road, but you still have to go in Willow Road to get downtown because you're sure as heck not gonna go up Turkey Foot and turn left on Mulberry in a golf cart. So,
Yeah,
so,
That is fair.
you know, that's my other pushback on that. And then I would like to know, I know people say that there's golf carts on there, but it's a very small area that the golf carts can even go on that little Turkey Foot.
correct.
It's not the whole thing. No one's driving all the way down. So that would be different, for sure. And then they would only be able to come from the north side if an accident did happen, according to what you're saying about the bridge.
Or the south side and go over the bridge on foot. Yeah, just
But
depends.
you could still come from the north side down.
Yes, correct.
Through the neighborhood, if there was something wrong there. But I also do see the point of less traffic on Willow Road all the way, you know, around that turn and by Design Aqua, I can see that as well. But it's more the safety on that. There's just a lot of cross traffic on that Turkey Foot Trail.
Absolutely.
That's what worries me the most.
Oh, yeah, and how the course was set up, that it actually goes perpendicular to the trail.
Yeah, that's my point.
And actually within that stretch specifically, pedestrians are to yield to golf carts, which we wouldn't do in our park system, but that requires the user to know that they should yield when a golf cart's coming out. So there is the potential for conflict. I haven't heard that there has been yet, but again, as we continue to grow and more traffic, the likelihood is also there. So in our world, you know, the safest means of transportation is to separate the modes. So that's why we have bike trails, and, you know, there are bike facilities on roads, but you know, you don't see a lot of kids and families on the roads, even if there is a bike lane, just because of the added concern and danger. So I'm all for separating the modes, but I'm not so black and white that we couldn't have this conversation if this made sense. But in this situation, there is a deed restriction. So again, we'd have to weigh that as well, but open for the entire conversation of getting people safely to where they want to be.
So I think again, excuse me, Heather has a little bit of work that she's doing on this. Again, if you guys are open to it, I'd prefer to kick this to the next meeting.
Do you need a motion to continue?
Yeah,
Well,
but I think-
Could we not, I mean, because the ordinance that's in front of us doesn't have anything to do with that,
That's
correct?
true.
So could we not go ahead and vote for this? And then, because in my mind, these are two separate
Yes.
conversations. I've got no problem with the ordinance as it's written that's in front of us. And I've got no issue if you want to bring an amendment to it back. I've got more reluctance on that topic than this one. So in my mind, they're two separate conversations that we don't have to hold this up to move forward, you know, to look into that as well.
No, that's fair.
Can I, Heather, is the only thing that you're kind of researching at this point is related to what would be an amendment to this, or are there things within this language that you're also investigating?
No, I don't think there's anything within this language. We were just trying to address some of the favorable requests, you know, that I know they were in favor of the ordinance, but with some additional requests, and then sorting through these pieces. I remembered enough about the Holiday Farm petition to be dangerous. So I just wanted to go back and make sure I understood what we had done there with the different, you know, restrictions. So there weren't any changes to this particular ordinance, I think, that needed to be done unless you wanted to add something further.
Well, I mean, I've heard a lot of people say, hey, there's parts of Willow I wouldn't be safe on. I don't think I'd take a golf cart on that portion. We could say, well, let's fix it and put a trail in. But at this point, we passed it and we're saying that you can take a car. That's your own personal choice on how safe you want to be, but we are allowing that. My thought would be, if we're going to move to have more of a trail option, that maybe we then eliminate and like you say, that's a portion where you don't want to put a golf cart. I'm open to either one. I'm just saying, like, I think everyone who's talked today, I said, that's probably not a great place to be putting a golf cart. Now, you can count on people to make their own decisions, but should we not also say that's a place where we really can't put a golf cart, use the trail instead, if it becomes an option? So I do think there's some correlation to the two pieces of legislation here.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective and reevaluating this, one of the things we had talked about was, have we had any issues, any emergencies, any ticketing concerns? And we haven't. I see them on Willow Road, going over into Austin Oaks, crossing over 421 at the stoplight there. And I do think it's a kind of like we talked about earlier. I think it's just easier to give our police officers enforcement opportunity to make sure that, everybody is doing things the way they should and safely. And I'm not opposed to coming back if we can open up the trail, coming back and looking at eliminating Willow Road. But again, I think if we do that, we eliminate the Willows and Austin Oaks and other parts of the town that people do use Willow Road for already. So,
Well, yeah, and you could go back and say there's all these other roads too, not just Willow, that would be just as dangerous that you.
Yeah.
That would be in this ordinance that you can start using.
yeah, we had 18 restrictions in the last ordinance. So this removes essentially all of them except for Oak Street, Sycamore Street from First to Michigan Road, and then 96th Street and 106th Street. So,
Mr. President, are there other particular, is your opinion that you'd like it as is with the two exceptions that you have, or are you of the mind that maybe there are other places that we should consider exempting?
no, I like this. I think Heather and I worked pretty hard on this. I like this ordinance, knowing that we would have some thoughts about the trail. But again, to Councilor Traylor's point, if we've got support for this, I would certainly be happy to move this along and then give an update at the next meeting. I know you won't be at the next meeting, so we won't put anything on that would specifically address it, Councilor Traylor, but we can at least have a presentation or talk about what we find out.
I still agree with, that we go ahead and vote on this today.
Make a motion to approve on final reading.
I'll second.
First by Councilor Traylor, second by Councilor Culp. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is ordinance 2023-0, correction. Up next is a consideration of an ordinance establishing the position of Director and Deputy Director of Finance and Records and reestablishing the position of Municipal Relations Coordinator of the Town of Zionsville. This is ordinance 2023-05. This is also a final reading, and I'm going to let Heather weigh in here if that's all right. I think we're in a similar spot where there's some statutory considerations that we want to review before we finalize this. Is that correct?
Well, so we, between the last public meeting and today, we had some comments that were submitted by the mayor's attorney for us to take a look at. I'm not sure they're really statutory in nature, but we haven't had a chance to thoroughly go through all of them. I think some of them we were aware of or had contemplated already. I don't know if we were aware of her concerns, but we were already, contemplated them and kind of looked through the statute. So it's really up to you what you want to do. If you want additional revisions, we can wait until the next meeting, or we can go ahead and do it today. And then if there are additional revisions, bring it back. Either is fine.
So just to be clear, that there are nothing in this ordinance is in conflict with the reorganization.
So I haven't had a chance to go back and review anything. I don't see anything in conflict. The only thing that's different here is we did add for the municipal relations coordinator that before any employment action would be taken, that there would be a conversation with the town council president and also some additional requirements of the town council president to share information about performance of that individual back with the mayor's administration through the Department of Human Resources. And again, this isn't specific to our current municipal relations coordinator, who is doing an awesome job, but really just to create more continuity between the role that position does for the council and the role it does for the administration. So it's right now, it's sort of, if you recall, a 50% allocated position. But one of the things that we are doing in this particular ordinance is transferring officially all of the clerk duties of the former clerk treasurer to that position, which require a lot of reporting requirements to the town council. So we believe it's important for the town council president to, be weighing in, is that person meeting those job performance obligations or not? And that was really the goal. Also, to make sure that if there was ever any employment action to suspend or terminate, it's really those two things, that the town council president would be made aware of it, and it would be done in consultation with the town council president, because without that role, the town council cannot function, because this is where all of your sort of staffing for the town council, public notices, et cetera, come from. So that was really the goal with that provision. Other than that, I feel confident that it aligns with the reorg, it aligns with state statute. It's really just restating a lot of what we had before, as well as the job descriptions, which were prepared by the administration.
Are there changes to this from what we passed upon introduction?
I have not made any revisions to date.
Is it your opinion that we do not need to make any changes?
Yes, I mean, I don't think we need to make any revisions unless you want to go back and accommodate, some of the written comments you all received. And the only thing different is what I just described, but that's not different from what you passed on first reading.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was under the impression that there was something that was incongruent with the reorganization. And if that's not the case, then I'm perfectly comfortable with it too. So
I make a motion to approve on final reading.
Second.
first by Counselor Trailer, second by Counselor Garrett. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Ordinance 2023-05 is approved with a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is new business. First item up in new business is a consideration of a resolution regarding the appropriation of additional funds. This is resolution 2023-04. And we have Cindy here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, this resolution that was being presented before you is to correct an issue with the non-DLGF budget. Everything listed here except for Fund 103 should have been on the non-DLGF budget and was inadvertently left off. Most of them are bond payments or bond proceeds that need to be used for their projects. But yeah, the majority are bond payments.
The $800,000 was inadvertently left off. Is that what you're talking about? Fund 103?
103, I'll let Jared answer that one.
Yes, those funds were requested throughout the process and just didn't end up on final documents before you all.
Like, when you say they were requested, like, did it come through the process when we were seeing all that and it just didn't make the thing I signed? Or did we not know about it through the whole process and we're trying to fix it now?
I'd have to look through what you were notified throughout the process, but they were requested with the CFO throughout the process.
Yeah.
But they were part of your budget, proposed budget the entire time.
Correct, yes. And I can provide Excel spreads from last summer.
I guess I'm just concerned that nobody, you or the CFO, noticed $800,000 was missing during a process.
No, we did, and it just didn't get added on in time. What's different about Fund 103 is it was DGLF. So it was caught after the budget was passed. So these funds, when the parks joined the general fund, these funds were set up into their own fund. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, I know that process because we wanted to make sure that we had a say at passing them.
Right.
And then we went through the whole budget process and this wasn't in that process. And now it's a lot of money, Jared, to just like say, oops, we missed it. Like I will be candid. I am concerned about the Parks Department's handling of funds right now. I think there are some gaps, given what I have seen recently. and you're now asking for $800,000 you forgot about, it gives me a little bit of heartburn. Not that it's not a valid ask, but I don't know. It's just a big miss.
Right, and not forgot, anticipated, and then it just was not included. So we knew we'd have to go before an additional appropriation.
Not forgot, but not include, but you didn't notice when it was submitted that it was not on there?
Correct. So
That's forgotten.
Well, it was my understanding that these funds would be included with the non-DGLF because they were these special pay it down and then they're gone forever. And it wasn't until publicly in one of our meetings that I even learned that Parks was getting separated out of the general fund again, that we were going to the old ways.
Back when we passed the non-DLGF. Correct.
That's when I learned that.
But why wasn't that brought to our attention when we passed it? Like, okay, guys, here's the non-DLGF budgets. By the way, we missed, I understand mistakes are made, but we missed $800,000. It's going to be coming to you because we can't do it at this activity. Like, we went through the entire process, public process, everything, had a good sense of what we were spending. And then now we're being asked for another $800,000 because no one flagged it. I have a problem with this. Like, it's not a problem necessarily with the outlay. It's a problem with the process, and it just keeps coming up. Like, at some point, like, I'm not supportive of doing this mainly because at some point I got to say no to something, right? So
What I can say on this is that I know with myself and Crow, we were not given the opportunity to review this before it was presented. And so if you look back on the document that was approved on the 27th of October, these funds, it shows the 2022 budget and then what's being requested for 2023. And all of these items that I have listed on here all had a 2022 budget, and for whatever reason were submitted with zero for
2022 budget or 2023 budget?
2023. So they were, so just to interject, and I want to save Jared some grief on this, is what he asked for in the 2023 non-DLGF budget was not the only thing left off of that budget. We have a whole litany list of items, including an incredible number of bond payments that total multiple millions of dollars. That if you look at the non-DLGF budget that was passed for this year, those line items, and Cindy and Crow did not get a chance to review them. They were budgeted for 2022 and then had a zero for 2023 bond payments. So it wasn't just Jared's ask that got left off. There were 15 different items, and that's what's in the resolution. Cindy and I have been exchanging phone calls and emails over the weekend trying to figure this out. It's not just a problem on the expense side of the non-DLGF. We have found that in some cases there are problems on the revenue side too, like and then also what's presented in this is the fund balances as of the end of last year. And because of software transition issues, we actually don't know what the fund balances are in any of these funds right now.
So why are we going to approve money for them? We don't even know what the balances are.
Well, for one thing, we have to approve the appropriations for bond payments. We cannot not approve those. And there's money there for that. We know that.
But you said these were all left off, but I was told at the beginning that this 103 park operating fund was the only one that was unique. Why is that one unique compared to what Councillor Choi was just saying?
It was requested by Jared. It was left off. The rest of this was things that were not additional, not different requests from the 2022 budget. What Jared is asking for was not asked for in the 2022 budget. Everything else that is zero line on the expense side on the 2023 budget that we're now looking at adding on was part of the 2022 budget, like all the bond payments and the law enforcement, continuing education, the unsafe building, the Boone County economic development. Those had 2022 budget allocations, but appropriations on the expense side, but in 2023, they had a zero by them. So we don't know why, but they were just left off. So those are those are continuations of budgeted items from prior budgets that we can explain. Jared's request, according to him, he requested it, but it was, again, one of those items that had a zero. In fact, there's the park operating expense line is not even included in the non-DLGF. So we wouldn't have even known that there was the prior.
But if it was,
I have a question on that, and this could explain a lot, but is it, I know this process goes through the administration, and they make their cuts before it comes to us. This wasn't just cut by them, right? They're in favor, the administration's in favor of this $800,000, so it wasn't cut. Okay.
Correct. And if you recall in July, I mentioned, we were focusing on operations, and the only new capital things we were doing were completing what was active. So the pickleball courts and the rail trail, as we waited for the next 5-year master plan. So that was always the plan. This was always the funds intended to see those through to the end.
So you came to us in October and asked for like $400,000 for pickleball courts.
This is that same number. So again, those were left off.
Yeah.
And it was 300,000. Yep.
So
the 800,000 is the first ask. We haven't already approved this ask, correct?
Correct.
So I guess my problem is when we were going through the budgeting process, DLGF and non-DLGF, this was not a part of the conversation. This council may have, I'm not saying they would have, but may have made different decisions based on this ask. We may have said, okay, do this instead of that. Now this just is being asked for additional $800,000, and we're not yet even 45 days into the calendar year. Again, my concern is not what the ask is for. My concern is a continuation of it just seems like there's just frustrating, right? Like this is just a mess, and it continues to be a mess. And I don't know that I want to spend $800,000 till I realize we don't have a mess anymore. We know what fund balances are, and like basic blocking and tackling that we've been complaining about for 3 years.
So for 3 years, we've had financial issues as a town. It's been with 4 different heads of finance, 2 different parks directors, multiple other department heads, with one common denominator is that the administration doesn't know what they're doing from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, what this feels like to me, and I'm not saying this is what it is, but this is what this feels like to me. We go through the budget process like we've done every time for the last 3 years. We say, listen, we're not going to pass an operational budget or a budget that is an operational deficit. We're just not going to do it. So what do? We carve things out. We say, come back to us later. And then obviously what it feels like now is this was carved out. Maybe Jared didn't have it carved out. Maybe the mayor carved it out. But this is, in my opinion, we said in the last budget, whatever you need in the budget that is required for the town, put it in the budget, which would make me believe that this isn't something that was necessarily needed for the budget.
What's this
I think
800,000 for?
one of the things that I want to refocus on is to Councilor Garrett's point is not specifically the 800,000. It's if you look at Exhibit A in this resolution, you're looking at, I don't know, I didn't sit down and total it up, but Fund 614 or the appropriations for Fund 614, the sewer works construction, that's $2.3 million that got left off the non-DLGF budget.
Those are also bond proceeds.
Those are bond proceeds,
Um,
but
So yeah, they wouldn't have had.
so it's not that we can't pay for it and that there's not money there, or we didn't. It just didn't get included. It's just absent.
I don't know if you remember or not. I think it was one of the November meetings that the former CFO came up and was wanting to amend the DLGF budget. But the way it was presented, it looked like you guys were approving another non-DLGF budget. And so you guys tabled it. Well, you didn't table it, you didn't pass it. And so this is the replacement, basically that amendment to that non-DLGF budget of those items that got left off.
So my point in this is that not that we wouldn't have approved this. We would have. These are all bond payments. There's no way we don't appropriate or approve the bond payments. We might have had discussion over Fund 103 and the pickleball courts and all that. I do have one question for you that if you'll entertain this. The $1.8 million in the next level trails, is that already included in the fund balance for 103?
No, that's in the separate 478 fund, which is the rail trail fund. So the request for 800,000 is to accomplish three goals. One is to reestablish 10% contingency. Within the northern expansion, we've already had 4 undercuts and we still have 3 miles to go. We've already discovered 2 within phase 1. So my goal would be obviously to not be spending these funds because these are park savings. So we need them for another day, but to definitely have the funds necessary to finish out the project for unanticipated items. We know that this section of rail trail is going to flood. So there's going to be things we're going to discover as we dig in the ground. The other 2 accomplishments of that 800,000 are to create a pathway from the rail trail to Trailside Elementary. So we've been working with the schools on a temporary construction easement and getting the approval from their entities to allow this access. And essentially we would pave the trail and provide it as a gift to the town or to the school as it enters their property, but then maintain the town portion from the rail trail. And the third item within that 800,000 is to improve the access to Pleasant View Elementary. One of my staff personally has witnessed a child break their arm coming down that. So we want to regrade that, repave, and make that a safer entrance and exit for our school students going to school.
Jared, what does this do to your balance in this budget? You're asking for $800,000.
Sorry.
What does this do to the balance in that particular budget line item?
For Fund 403?
Yeah.
So every year that is replenished with funds from the general fund, that 314 park improvements. As of November, that sat around 900,000. So this would take it down to 6. And again, that's kind of our emergency reserve is what we want to transition that to. Now it's kind of understanding what these park savings will be within Fund 103. So last year, Fund 103 was what funded the 5-year master plan and the golf cart improvements the year before that, as well as Heritage Trail Park. So that was our kind of park specific savings that we used for capital projects. And now that's back in the operating fund of parks. So it's just understanding that new relationship and what'll happen to those reserves. Will they now increase as we underspend on line items each year? That's just something I need to understand from our finance department.
So this could get replenished, but what would be your balance in case you actually had an emergency this year that you would be able to tap into?
There would still be 1.3 within Fund 103, even after this expense, if all funds were spent out, plus that 600,000 within that fund. So just under 2 million still available for emergencies.
So Fund 103 and 403 are both funded through movement fund flow from the general fund. Is that right?
Yes. 403, yes, and 103.
yes.
What I still
Should that be reflected on somehow on the revenue side of the non-DLGF budget? Because there's nothing, when I looked at the non-DLGF budget we passed for this year, there was no Fund 403 on the revenue side.
That's because each year it depends on what's left in that park improvement line. So we don't know from year to year what's going to be left in there to transfer over to Fund 403.
Okay. It's so I want to reiterate again, I know we're picking on Jared. This is not, I truly believe this is not Jared's fault. And these are things that he would have asked for last year that we would have happily approved. It just did not get, there are, let me look here, what, 15 some line items in Exhibit A that got left off. And even as Cindy and I were talking about the fund and looking on the revenue side, we realized it's small things. It's like the law enforcement continuing ed, but even on the revenue side, it wasn't properly placed in there, noted in there. So I think, and then we don't know, I can't imagine 45 days in, we have that significant of a balance difference in any of those funds than what you have put together in this resolution. But, we also don't know what the balance is because we're transitioning finance softwares again.
I respectfully disagree in the sense that I think the request for 103 should have been a different request than everything else. That should have been it's an additional appropriation, much like we do throughout the year. Everything else here is things that we were aware of that just need to be cleaned up financially, right? It's not new spend. It's stuff we knew we had to do. There was an error. It was zero in the balance, whatever. 103 is a new request to this council for new spend out of the park operating fund and should have been a different request, should have been a different process, and I think also should have been more visible to the public that doesn't read in all this detail to say, oh, okay, the parks is asking for $800,000. They didn't ask for it during the budget process. And we would go through that normal process. So my problem again is not the request. It is sort of, it's not hidden is the wrong word because that implies intent, but it is grouped together incorrectly. I think we should have been debating that separately rather than lumping it into bond payments, quite frankly. It is Fund 103. It says that's your operating fund. That's not the parks operating fund. Is the parks operating fund a non-DLGF fund?
No.
Okay, because we were told these were non-DLGF spending, but this is now this is a budgeted spend, correct?
Yeah, on the appropriate or on the resolution, it doesn't say anything about being non-DLGF. I referenced that for all of the other ones. And I think in the narrative, I may have said that most were not on all the items except for 103.
Okay, so that's a very important point because you.
Right, no, now I'm actually
got it.
Understanding what you're getting at.
That to the public, that puts us in a
So
deficit.
103 should have been included as part of capital outlays in the regular budget.
Which meant something else would have potentially been cut if this was more of a priority. And that's the concern I have with all of
And
this.
you remember all the discussions, multiple discussions we had around the issues with what was classified as capital outlays and what we actually passed. And this will carry over to this year's budget of taking a much closer look at what in there is truly capital outlays and what's not. Not that we wouldn't have passed this, it's just, we don't know.
Well, we don't know. We might not have passed something else, right?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
That's 800,000. We would now have an $800,000 deficit budget that we would, if we all believed wanted a balanced budget, would have to find that something else in the budget if this was a priority.
And we have more. I mean, we passed the budget with a capital outlay of, over $8 million in the negative. And we justified it by saying these are capital projects when in closer look, we looked at them, some of them are operating expenses like bullets and, so I think we've got a much bigger, I'm not as concerned about Jared's ask so much as, I do have concerns to your point, but I have more of a concern about how we're looking at the town's budgeting.
It's 3+ years of frustration, unfortunately, that you're hearing.
You're just.
These numbers have
recipient of
changed 3 times in the 2 years I've been here as well, so I get it.
Well, to try to resolve things, I mean, I'm inclined to just continue this because it's too much to unpack. And I also believe that we've packaged requests together that to Councilor Garrett's point, may be best if we separated those and voted on them separately. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's salvageable in a motion here.
Less that one and we'll read.
I think that's what we need to do because the rest is bond payments. That's.
Well, it's not all bond payments, right? But like,
There's stuff like donations, law enforcement continuing it.
Right.
The ones
But-
that say capital outlays, those are actually bond proceeds that are being budgeted so they can work on their projects.
And Cindy, there are specific pieces of this that, in your opinion, need to be approved. And again, I'd like to continue it and strip it apart and figure out what we need to do. But are there anything that's an urgent piece that you have to have an obligation to pay now?
I think if we can at least regroup and put it through on the March 6th, that should be okay. First payments for bonds will be in June.
So if we wait till the next meeting, you're not gonna be in arrears or some default. Okay.
Well, it's still jumbled together. I mean,
But we'd still split it apart.
no, I mean, I like the idea of, and I won't make a motion yet if there's still discussion, but just basically approving everything about 103 and having that come as a separate request for an appropriation. I don't know if folks are in favor of that or not, but that
That'd
gets
be
through all the
done
bond
together.
payment stuff. That's just kind of the financial stuff. But I want to hear the appropriation separately and make sure the public has a chance to weigh on that too.
So I was a little bit confused if there were bond payments or bond proceeds being allocated for construction, because I heard.
There's both in there.
There's both.
There's both.
in here.
And so are they separated
Like,
or are they in the same fund? Because that was my question.
No, they're separated out if any, because what I did is I put it by line item, the fund and the description of the line item. So if some of it is for capital and some of it's for a bond payment, that is split out on this document.
Yeah, so like 614 sewer construction is proceeds and 641 is bond payment.
Correct.
So, I mean, if you're okay with moving into the March meeting and we get a better sense of everything, I think that would be great to make everybody comfortable. But if you feel like you need, I'm comfortable with approving the proceeds and bonds. What I want is to take a relook at our non-DLGF items and just even on the revenue side. I mean, I know it's when you and I talked about some of these revenue items, they're small items, so like 10,000 or whatever. It's not a big deal, but it still concerns me that it's not properly documented. So and if it's not properly documented on the non-DLGF side, what's missing on the regular budget side too? So I think we're all lacking confidence in what happened with this.
Crow put the DLGF budget together, and I don't have any concerns with the numbers that they brought together for that budget. Just the items that were missed on this one.
Or just for the, I know sometimes the public doesn't really understand exactly what we're talking about up here. The total, I totaled these up. We're talking about an additional, $5.8 million in ask today. So just for an idea of why we're making such a big deal about this, it's a lot. Now, I am curious how the non-DLGF portion get caught? Like, how did we find that?
I was going through it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I suspected that would be the answer. I just wanted to acknowledge, thank you for finding that error and making the effort to correct it.
And Cindy's been really incredible because we've been, even on the weekend, she and I figured this out sometime yesterday, driving back from Chicago, and we've been exchanging phone calls and emails and text messages, trying to get through for her to explain to me what was going on here. So.
This is a public hearing. I approve publication of public notice of the public hearing. At this point, I will open the public hearing. Wow. Are there any members from the public who would like to comment? I'll close the public meeting. Yeah, I mean, I guess if it's all or nothing, I mean, my perspective, if it's all or nothing, I mean, I don't like it. I don't think it feels good. I don't like it, but if we're going to move it to the next meeting and separate things out, we can separate things out. I mean, whatever you guys want to do.
I think if Cindy's comfortable with it, that's the thing to do, to just get everybody comfortable with what's happening with this. And if you could take a look on what was passed last year, you and I looked at even the police training fund or whatever it was called, and noticed that it didn't receive the revenue allocation that it should.
Right.
So if we could go through, and if you wouldn't mind going through and making sure everything's correct.
Sure.
Coming back with that. And as well as just an FYI, Cindy and I talked about what the fund balance is for all these funds. Because of the software transition, we might not know until the end of March.
Probably closer to April, just for the fact that once we get the annual report submitted, and everything balanced out from OpenGov. Boyce will need 6 to 8 weeks to be able to extract all that information and get it put into the new system.
So the last knowledge we have of these fund balances is what you see in front of you. It's the fund balance at the end of last year. That's the latest information we have. I'm sure, I mean, I can't imagine that we spent so much out of any of these funds that it's significantly different, but that's as accurate as we're going to get.
The separation of the DLGF and non-DLGF budgets continues to be a problem. I would, it's February. We haven't started the 2024 budget yet. I'd like to just make it known that if we're not voting on a single budget for 2024, I'm going to be a no.
I've already got some ideas for that. So.
Yeah.
At the recommendation of
And
the
the
State Board of
SBO
Accounts. I mean, they're the ones who want it.
SBOA
Yeah.
recommended that we combine the two budgets into a single budget, not to separate them out.
Right.
All right. Any other questions for Cindy? Go ahead.
My thought is to move it back. I get, there are people who have a different opinion today about maybe passing portions of this, maybe splitting it out. I don't think there's a will to pass it all. And there's pieces that have to be passed. So I think there's a risk to try to put it up for a vote and not vote it down. And to Cindy's point, there's nothing urgent enough in here that we can't wait 2 more weeks. So there's no real, I don't see any real harm there. So I would make a motion to continue this into the next meeting.
Got a motion by Vice President Burke.
Second.
A second by Counselor Choi. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is a consideration of an ordinance establishing an opioid fund. This is ordinance 2023-06. This is the first reading, and we have Cindy for this one as well.
This is establishing the funds for the opioid settlement that we're receiving, that we opted into. It's the larger settlement. I know last meeting we talked about the one from Meyer, et cetera. This is the large settlement, and we're required to set up 2 funds, one for restricted and one for unrestricted funds as we receive those in. But we were actually told which funds to use, so by the state. We're just following through and getting those set up so we can receive money in.
Cindy, can you just explain the difference between the restricted fund and the unrestricted fund?
Yes, I don't have the exact guidelines, but the restricted funds will definitely have to be used more for like the opioid problems and things towards that. Heather may know exactly or a little more as far as, I haven't seen the requirements yet, but the unrestricted, which looks like it, from what we received, is about 1/3 of what the restricted is. Those will be a little bit more loose on the requirements that we can use them, but we're still in the process of figuring all that out.
Okay.
So on the heels of that question, what discussions has the administration had on, I mean, the unrestricted goes into the general fund? Is that, or, I mean, it stays in there, but it can be used for personal. Right.
The requirements are more loose on the unrestricted, but to say it could be used for anything, I wouldn't want to say that just for the fact that I haven't seen the requirements yet.
It would still have to be budgeted though, right?
Yes.
Right.
So
So on the restricted and the unrestricted, are we having conversations on the administrative level? And I think it might be good for council to be involved. I mean, I know it's only 80 some odd $1,000, but it's substance abuse and the issues surrounding it obviously important to me, but it is one of those things that maybe we should have a conversation also about where this money goes, what programs it supports, what we can do in this town to support that, because more and more as we look more and more into what's going on in our town, especially in our high schools and middle schools, we're realizing this is more of a problem than we are admitting to. So.
sounds like you just volunteered yourself.
I'm off with you. So.
Yeah, once we get the requirements and we can see more what can be done, then, we could sit down and kind of go through that.
Any other questions from counselors for Cindy? I'd make a motion to introduce ordinance 2023-06.
Second.
Second by Counselor Melton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome. It's still me.
Next, yeah, consideration and cancellation of warrants.
So this is, you really don't have to take any action on this. We're just required in February of every year to present checks that have not cleared that by the December of the second year. And so these are the items that are still outstanding that meet those guidelines. We do and are in the process of trying to reach out to these people to let them know that, you know, these checks didn't clear or hadn't been cashed. So if we need to replace them, we can.
So folks on this list, in theory, could still request their
Correct.
money. Okay, very good. Do you need us to vote on this, or is this just an
Nope.
FYI? Okay, got it.
It's more of just informational.
Cindy, this is, or maybe I should ask Amy. Amy, this is included in our packet online, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so if there's anybody out there that
What-
thinks the town owes you money, you better
What
get on it
effort
quick.
do we make to contact these people to say you haven't?
We'll send letters. I mean, that's about all we can do is send letters and to let them know.
Okay.
And who do they contact if they do want their money? Just you?
Well, we're in the process of doing the letters right now. And so we're down a person right now. So most likely, yes, it'll be me.
All right. Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Up next is other matters. I just wanted to give the council a quick update. Heather, Brad and I were talking on Friday about, and the job descriptions as part of this cleanup effort, right? Like to go back and rewrite some ordinances and make sure they get, you know, we've got the right language and everything in there. I think an appropriate timeline probably would, obviously, we're not just going to pick everything off and do it in 1 or 2 meetings. I mean, this will be likely over the next 8 months, I would imagine. Is that correct, Heather?
Yes, that's correct. So the goal would be to have it concluded before the end of the year and before you're really back in the throe of the budget cycle as well. And I'll be what I was going to do is put together kind of a schedule of here's what we think we can chunk off at each meeting. That would also give some of the department heads notice to take a look at their sections, which we hope they will be doing as part of the process and, you know, providing any ideas or content back to us of things they might want to see revised or restructured. But that would give us all kind of a working schedule.
Perfect. Anything else from counselors? I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second by Counselor Colt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. The next regular town council meeting is scheduled for Monday, March 6, 2023 at 7 PM in the Zionsville Town Hall Council Chambers. Final notice will be posted in compliance with the Indiana Open Door Law.